the Jets are like a failing public school where where students just do terribly, and then when those students leave that school to go to a better private school, they end up flourishing academically. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Moving the Goalposts. I'm Nick DiMartino. You can follow us across social media at this podcast, at MTGPETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. And this show is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show to find out more. By the way, you can also follow, I forgot to say, you can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. But yes, this show is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later in the show. Okay, so I guess the theme of today's show is bad coaching. That's kind of been the whole news cycle in football. The NFL and college football has basically been bad coaching and bad officiating. That's mostly been the theme. And, there's a whole lot of talk about Mike McDaniel being on the hot seat. Brian Callahan was just fired. A little bit of a perplexing move that they fired Brian Callahan in the very, just in week 6, right after week 6, and Cam Ward's a rookie quarterback. Probably not the best thing for a rookie quarterback to fire the head coach that early on, but whatever. I guess that's just the type of organization that the Titans are. And obviously, I understand there's a difference between Aaron Glenn and Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel is on his 4th season. So I understand that there's obvious, and he's had many more chances than Aaron Glenn has. I totally understand. However, I don't think you can argue that the Jets are the worst coached team in the NFL. I don't even really know if there's much of an argument. Not only are the Jets the worst coached team in the NFL, the Jets are also possibly the worst run team in the NFL. I mean, it's not just the coaching, it's the ownership, it's everything. In this game, people talk about sometimes the Jets coming up with creative ways to lose. And I don't even necessarily think that's so much accurate, as much as there are a whole bunch of ways in which the Jets were gifted a chance to win. Almost creative ways that the Broncos gave the Jets a chance to win. And the Jets didn't take advantage of it. And this is not the only time that, look what happened against Tampa Bay. The Jets were in the game because of a blocked field goal by Will McDonald and a touchdown to Alan Lazard that really was not a catch, that they never should have called a touchdown, but they didn't overturn the call. And the Jets were up by 1 point, and sure enough, Tampa drives down the field and kicks a field goal. The problem, the Jets can never take advantage of any of these times that they're, especially the Jets offense in particular, can never seem to take advantage of any sort of gift that they're given. Look, I understand Denver is supposed to be a good team. I think Denver is probably an average team. The Jets are a bad team, but London is the equalizer. It seems like London's a weird place. I think that London is a bit of an equalizer for NFL teams, similar to how short weeks are equalizers with NFL teams like the Giants and the Eagles. I think that on a regular Sunday, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock game or night game, I think that that's how it normally is. But, London games, Thursday night games, those are short weeks in general. Those are equalizers, I think. So the Jets and Broncos, similar to last year, by the way, the Jets almost beat the Vikings last year in London. Based on how the seasons went, that's a bit surprising. So London is an equalizer. The Jets are a bad team. The Broncos are an average team. and uh, and maybe even a little bit above average. But London was the equalizer, and the Jets had a lot of opportunities to win the game, and they didn't take advantage of any of it. And a lot of it is coaching. It's not just coaching. It's also the fact that they have no weapons on offense outside of Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson was not even targeted until the second quarter, which goes to show you that it's very easy to beat the Jets on offense, which is, just double team Garrett Wilson, and they have nobody else to throw to. I think Justin Fields is an okay player, but he just never was in a good situation. And I think that's just true of a lot of young quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks just are serviceable if you put them in good enough situations. And Justin Fields, in his entire career in the NFL, was never in a great situation. He went from the Bears, who are like the Jets. It's like a graveyard for young quarterbacks. Then he went to the Steelers, who do okay, but they never really get their offense right. And then he goes to the Jets. All three defensive-minded head coaches, not just defensive-minded head coaches, but two out of those three are disasters for offenses and for young quarterbacks, especially the Jets. So Justin Fields never really had a fair opportunity. I think the Jets giving Justin Fields $40 million over 2 years was such an overpay. It was so ridiculous. Like, I'm not exactly sure what the Niners are giving Mac Jones, but I think Mac Jones got like $7 million for 2 years. Mac Jones has a 2-year $8.41 million. And Justin Fields, the Jets paid 2 years, $40 million. Okay, so and the thing is, I would understand it a little more if the Jets had like an offensive-minded head coach and they were going to set up a system that would work for Justin Fields. In that case, maybe the 2 years, $40 million is worth the money. I mean, 2 years, $40 million for a quarterback who's proven himself a little bit, which Justin Fields really hasn't, but who's proven himself a little bit, is actually not a crazy overpay. Mac Jones was given less than half the money to go to the Niners. Gave Mac Jones less than half the money. And the Niners are a very good situation for quarterbacks that are young and really just like unproven and not great. Like the Niners, they went to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. Like the Niners are a really good situation for would be a much better situation for a quarterback like Justin Fields. The Jets obviously are not. And I think a huge part of why they gave Justin Fields the amount of money they did was simply because of age. It was because of age. Let's be honest. Like if it's because they looked at, we just went through one season with Aaron Rodgers, who's an aging quarterback that we knew we didn't really have any future with. So they look at a young guy like Justin Fields and like, well, maybe he could be a franchise quarterback or whatever. I don't know what delusion made them think that. I mean, we've seen him with the Bears and with the Steelers. The Steelers, unquestionably a better organization for a young quarterback than the Jets, and it didn't work out there very well. So I don't know what made them think it would work out here. I mean, the Jets have most of my lifetime have been inept on offense. We rarely even have offensive-minded head coaches, and the one time we did, we were pretty bad. So I don't know what made the Jets think that giving Justin Fields that money was a good idea. It's pure delusion. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that Justin Fields is not a quarterback that is going to thrive with the Jets coaching staff. I don't even really understand the logic there. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. I was able to figure it out. I don't know why they couldn't figure it out. Obviously, they would have been better off just with Aaron Rodgers for another year. But the biggest problem for the Jets offense obviously is the coaching. The end of the second quarter was the most inexcusable play calling I've ever seen. You fake the punt on 4th and 1, you give it to Breece Hall. How do you not just automatically go into a hurry up offense? to just move the ball up the field a little bit. I don't even mean like, oh, you got to try to, like it's unacceptable if you don't score a touchdown there or anything like that. Like, no. Just move the ball maybe 20, 15 yards and you're in field goal range. Nick Folk has pretty good range. That would have been like, even if they just gotten it to the 40-yard line, Nick Folk can make a 57-yard field goal. Instead, the first thing they do was run the ball with Breece Hall, as if, like, what is the strategy behind what they were doing? It makes no sense. The Jets' offense is completely inept. It's inept in coaching. It's inept in weapons. It's inept in every way possible. And also, why are the Jets doing all these drop back passes with Justin Fields? Like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. I don't understand what the Jets could have possibly been thinking. And it's the coaching. And I'm not calling for Aaron Glenn to be fired or anything like that. He's 6 games into his Jets head coaching tenure, obviously. But can we at least admit that I was probably right about Aaron Glenn? In fact, I probably didn't even take it far enough, because even I didn't like the Aaron Glenn hire, but I got to tell you, I didn't think it would be this bad. I did not think it would be even close to as bad as it's been. I didn't think there was any way. I just did not. I would not have thought the Jets would have gone 0-6 to start the season. It's not terribly shocking, but I would have thought maybe at least 1-5. You get one win. Maybe at least you got something. But now it looks like Garrett Wilson is expected to miss 2 weeks. The Jets could go 0-17. I mean, the Jets are that bad. They are that bad. I know they're favored, last I checked, by 1.5 points at home against the Panthers. I mean, that's against the Panthers is the best shot to actually get their first win. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I think the Panthers are, which by the way, the 1.5 point spread, I saw a tweet that said the Panthers, people don't seem to, where it said that, where it showed that the Jets actually were favored by 1.5 points against the Panthers. And I saw a tweet that said something like, the Panthers really aren't, people don't understand that the Panthers really aren't such a bad team. But I also would say to that, you don't understand how point spreads work. I mean, if the Panthers are favored, if the Jets are favored by 1.5 points at home, that's Vegas telling you that the Panthers are a slightly better team than the Panthers. The one thing that gives me a lot of hope for the Jets is that the Panthers are a pretty bad road team. All 3 of their wins have come at home. The Panthers are not a good road team, and they've lost by pretty big margins. They've lost. The Panthers lost by 16-5, which, by the way, was when that was against the Cardinals, where the Cardinals just let them back in the game, and the Patriots by almost 30 points on the road. None of these. I mean, the Jaguars are pretty good, but none of these are really great teams. So I think the Panthers there's a big dichotomy between home and the road. So it wouldn't actually shock me at all if the Jets end up winning this game, because I don't know what the Panthers can really do on the road. It wouldn't shock me if it goes the other way either. But yeah, that's really all the odds are telling you, which is that the Panthers are a slightly better team, but they're just the Panthers might be a little bit like the Bears, which is that there's huge dichotomy between playing at home and playing on the road. So that could be a big part of it. But in terms of the coaching decisions, it's just a disaster. And the Broncos Denver did everything they could just to give that game away. I mean, first of all, the first 2 drives of that game, the Jets offense was spotted first with a fumble. The Jets finally got a takeaway, which that was the big thing. The Jets defense didn't get a single takeaway. And then they do get a takeaway. What do they do with it? They do nothing. The Jets hardly move the ball. What happens is the Jets get a takeaway. They hardly move the ball at all. They move the ball. They get a 2-yard run with Breece Hall. Then the Jets get called for a 5-yard penalty. And then the Jets throw. Then Fields gets sacked. The Jets run the ball again for 6 yards, and then they just kick a field goal. They just kick a 52-yard field goal. So they go from the 37, Denver's 37 to the 34. The Jets move the ball 3 total yards after their defense gets the takeaway. The defense finally gets the takeaway that people kept talking about. The Jets offense does nothing with it. And then the Jets, then Denver, they kick the field goal to tie the game up at 3. And then then on the kickoff, they run the ball. They run the ball back up 61 yards. They run the ball. They run the ball back up 72 yards. They end up getting spotted at Denver's 26. They get spotted at Denver's 26-yard line. What's the first thing they do? They run the ball for a loss with Breece Hall. They end up, again, they move the ball. They go from the 26 to the 23. They move the ball 3 yards. They move the ball 3 yards. Like, I understand you not being able to get into end zone for one of them. You can't score a touchdown at all. You can't even come close on at least one of them. Even if you don't score a touchdown, even if you kick a field goal, at least eat up some clock, do something, control time of possession, or do something. If not for the Jets getting spotted by their defense and their special teams, those first 2 drives, they don't even have points on the board. It's not even like the Jets offense went down the field and was able to do anything. They couldn't do anything. Like I don't even know. And by the way, it's a total of both those first 2 drives, 3 plays and a field goal. The start of the second quarter, that the Jets have another 3 and out, and then another 3 and out after that. They're not moving the ball. It's all either a 3 and out or 3 and field goal for the first half of the game. It's completely dysfunctional. The fact that the score is 10-6 at that point is just laughable because it really just isn't that close outside of a takeaway from the Jets defense, and a special team and a good special teams play by the Jets, which spotted them in Denver territory. I mean, you could hardly even give the offense any credit for the 6 points. And then and then finally they get it together a little bit in the third quarter, and then they go back to their old ways. Then they go back to their old ways of a whole bunch of 3 and outs. I mean, the only non-punt plays, or either the only plays where they were able to actually kick the only drive where they were able to kick a field goal by actually moving down the field by themselves, not just being spotted in Denver's territory, was the first drive of the third quarter. That's the only one. Everything else was just a punt or turnover on downs outside of the other 2 drives where they were spotted. The offense is horrible. It's a disaster. It's completely unacceptable. And the coaching has just, we're talking about all sorts, right now in college football and the NFL, there's a whole lot of talk about coaches being fired. James Franklin was fired. Mike McDaniel's on the hot seat. Brian Callahan was fired. Look, I don't follow all of those teams like I follow the Jets, but I find it very hard to believe that those teams are as inept offensively as the Jets are. I find all of that hard to believe. In terms of what they were doing, the last drive of the game, just like at the last drive of the game was just like, I mean, sure, they got the Jets were able to get a couple of first. The Jets were able to get a first down. Of course, the last drive, the best play was when Breece Hall recovered the fumble. Outside of that, they were pretty bad. It was just bad. And also, the Jets, they have to stop with the drop back passes with Justin Fields. They had to move the ball a little bit. I would understand if you got to go all the way down the field, you got to score a touchdown, you got to do something. The Jets, They were right there. A field goal wins them the game. Two, if they just do it twice, they kick a field goal at the end of the first half, or they kick a field goal there. They move the ball like what? They moved the ball like maybe they were on their own. They were on their own 43. You move the ball 20 yards, you kick a field goal. You win the game. You can win the game. You eat up clock a little bit. You have a legitimate shot to win the game. Or even if you don't do it there and you do it at the end of the first half, like you don't even have to move the ball that much. And they're doing drop back passes with Justin Fields rather than just running like a hurry up offense to move the ball a little bit and maybe, be able to kick a field goal, which is what they should have done. But the Jets offense is a disaster. By the way, I'm in favor of putting in Tyrod Taylor at this point. At this point, I mean, the Jets had a total of the Jets had a total of what I think it was like negative 10 passing yards for the game. It was the Jets offense is just a total disaster. At this point, just put in Tyrod Taylor because I think Tyrod Taylor is just a better choice than Justin Fields. And by the way, I don't know who has it worse in this sense, the Browns or the Jets, but how about we look at I think that the thing with the Jets is that one thing I learned, and I guess it took me long enough to figure it out. Maybe I should have figured it out sooner. But when you look at former quarterbacks and even former coaches, you look at them leave the Jets and they just flourish. Like, I think I said this on the last week's show, but the Jets are like a failing public school where where students just do terribly. And then when those students leave that school to go to a better private school, they end up flourishing academically. But, all those students just struggled academically at this failing public school. That's what the Jets are. The Jets are the failing public school of the NFL. The Browns, I think, could also kind of fit that description too. How many of our former quarterbacks and former coaches have just flourished elsewhere? And by the way, I got to tell you, I think it's worse for the Jets than it is for the Browns. The Browns have Baker Mayfield, who is having an MVP caliber season in Tampa Bay. The Jets, the Jets have Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, Sam Darnold in Seattle. You could even say Todd Bowles coaching in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is like the ultimate. Tampa Bay, we have Bowles, and like I said, Darnold in Seattle, and Geno Smith when at least when he was not until recently, I would say Geno Smith and Joe Flacco. We'd be better off, it seems like, with any of those guys. Geno Smith's having a bad year this year, but up until last year, Geno Smith would be a perfect example of that, of him being in a good situation. I think Geno Smith's just going back to his old ways. But you have Darnold, who we all thought was a bust until he left the Jets. Actually was in a decent system. Bowles, who I always kind of thought wasn't a good head coach, but he probably just didn't have anything to work with the Jets. And Flacco, who I thought was done, and Rodgers, who obviously I think the Jets should have stuck with. I don't even know if any, because a lot of Jet fans didn't want to stick with Aaron Rodgers. I think it was a stupid decision. The Jets should have stuck with Aaron Rodgers. It would have been a better move than paying Justin Fields. It would have been a better move. Aaron Glenn moving on from Rodgers, probably not a good move. Let's just be honest. It just wasn't. And it's not even like, he's in this amazing system. He's not like he's playing under Kyle Shanahan or something like that. He's flourishing with the Steelers, who never seem to get their offense right. He's a little bit like the Steelers are just like a better system than the Jets, a better situation than the Jets, but they're not a great situation either. And it looks like the Steelers might end up winning the division. Now, part of it is also that he's like a year removed from his Achilles injury, so he's a little healthier than he was. But look, the common denominator is the Jets. That's the problem. If everybody leaves the Jets and they flourish elsewhere, obviously the problem is the Jets. There's something wrong with the foundation of the building. And it's not just coaching, it's also ownership. It's run by the same people. So ultimately, it's an ownership problem. But yes, please admit that it was a dumb idea to let Aaron Rodgers go. We should have kept him. That would have been a better situation. And you know what? With the way the AFC looks this year, I mean, look, I'm not saying the Jets likely would have been a playoff team, but in the AFC, you have a much better shot at making the playoffs as a subpar team this year than the NFC. Like, I think the AFC and NFC, if I were to put it in college football terms, are like the SEC and the Big Ten. The NFC is like the SEC, and the AFC is like the Big Ten, in the sense that there's a whole lot of there's a few really, really great teams in the AFC. And by the way, I don't even know how great they are anymore. I mean, I would have said going into the season, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bills as really great teams in the AFC. Now the Ravens, Lamar Jackson got hurt, so they don't even really look so great. So even more so now. But a whole lot of question mark teams. How good are the Bengals going to be? The Steelers, the Chargers, the Broncos? We don't really know. A whole lot of question marks. The AFC has some really great teams, but they're not deep. The NFC, I would say, has not so many great teams. I'm not convinced. I think the Lions are a really good team. I think they're the best team. The Eagles, I'm a little shaky with. I don't know how good the Eagles are. The Eagles' offense goes dormant at times. The Eagles are a little bit like the Georgia football of the NFL. Like, every game is 2 games for the Eagles. And you always end up scratching your head, and their offense is just very inefficient at times, but they usually pull out the wins in those situations. That's really what the Eagles are. But the NFC is deeper. The NFC is deeper than the AFC, and it's a lot harder. And I think there's going to be 1 or 2 teams in the AFC that make it that are at best average, maybe even worse, maybe even below average. I mean, look, the Ravens are now 1-5. Lamar Jackson is out until God knows when, and we don't even know if he comes back, if he's even going to be healthy. And the Ravens have a really, really good chance to make the playoffs. That's how shallow the AFC is this year. It looks like the AFC South will likely get 2 teams, possibly, into the playoffs. That's how, the AFC is just not right now, and a lot of it is just injuries. Burrow and Jackson being injured, obviously, it makes it that much easier to make the playoffs. Which, in fairness, nobody could have predicted, obviously. But the NFC is just so deep. I mean, if you look at the teams in the AFC, that almost everything that happened in the AFC, it was the AFC this year. If you look at how bad it is, it's almost like the worst case scenario. You get two of the 4 best quarterbacks in the league. All of them are in the AFC. The 3rd and 4th best quarterbacks in the league both get injured, at least in my opinion. Both get injured. And the Bengals do nothing about it until weeks later. And by the way, even the Bengals could end up making the playoffs with Flacco. That's how bad the AFC looks right now. The Dolphins are worse than anybody could have predicted. Way worse than I could have predicted. And their head coach is on the hot seat, and the Dolphins were, I would have predicted at least, to be able to make the playoffs in the AFC. The Broncos kind of look okay. The Chargers looked good, and then they got very injured, and we don't really know how to feel about the Chargers. They just barely beat the Dolphins this past weekend. And you know what? Maybe if the Jets had stuck with Rodgers, maybe they would have had some fighting chance. They probably wouldn't have made it. Who knows? But they probably not. But they maybe would have had something. But the Jets now, they can't take advantage of any opportunities at all. And the coaching is a disaster. It's a bigger disaster than the Titans. It's a bigger disaster than the Dolphins. It's as bad as it gets. it's not just the coaching, it's it's the front office, it's everything. And I understand we're not locked in with Justin Fields for a long period of time, but paying him 2 years, $40 million to put him in a situation, to put him in the failing public school of the NFL was a stupid decision. I can't tell which team is worse run, the Jets or the Browns, who just gave away Joe Flacco for practically nothing to a division rival.
Hey fans, Novig is here to change the way you play. Available in 35 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and New York, Novig is America's #1 sports prediction market, and it's 10 times more profitable than traditional sports books because there's no house edge. Instead, you're betting directly against other sports fans just like yourself. Novig is also the only free exchange, which means you keep every dollar you win, whether you're putting plays down on the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, college sports, or even UFC and tennis. Novig gives you the power to pick the best odds, or better yet, set your own. Sign up today with the code ETB Network, and you'll get 1,000 Novig coins plus $5 in Novig cash, and special bonus offers like spending $5 and getting $50 back. Novig, where fans play smarter. You must be 21 years or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Moving the Goalposts is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, rubbing your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. All right, so I'm going to move on a little bit to the Chiefs. Are the Chiefs back? And I think yes. Look, I don't really put much. Look, they beat the Lions 30-17. There are very few other teams other than maybe the Bills. All right, I'll give you the Bills that could beat the Lions the way the Chiefs did. There aren't a lot of teams that could do it. A lot of people are saying things like, well, the Chiefs, they're just not quite the same team that they were last year. I completely disagree. I think the Chiefs are actually exactly the same team that they were last year. Actually, I think that the Chiefs from 2 years ago into last year is where the big change happened, where there was the biggest drop-off. I don't think there's much of a drop-off from the Chiefs last year to the Chiefs this year. I don't think there's that much of a drop-off. I think the only difference is that the Chiefs are playing a tougher schedule in the beginning of the season this year, whereas the Chiefs were able to pull off ugly wins against some of the worst teams in the league last year. The Chiefs are a little bit like those Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, Seattle teams, or the Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, Packers teams, which just kind of took a nap through up until Halloween, and then in November, December, turned it on. And that's kind of just how good teams in the NFL are built. They're built for November, December football. And I think people just have a short-term memory that a lot of those really good teams, those heavy favorites, like, those Seattle teams, those Packers teams, they weren't always great throughout the whole season. And that's a little bit like what the Chiefs look like to me. That's just what the Chiefs are. They are the Packers, the Seahawks of, from 10 years ago. I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. I think they're going to win that division. And that's really all it is. Like, I think everybody wanted to believe that the Chiefs' run was over, blah, 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 blah. I think it's all complete nonsense. It's all just complete nonsense. Not many teams. I think the Lions, I would have said the Lions up until they lost to the Chiefs. I likely would have said the Lions were the best team in the NFL. And I do think the Lions are the best team in the NFC. I certainly do. And I think you got to put, like, if you're going to do college football rankings, the Chiefs have got to be up there for some of the best teams in the NFL. And I mean, the Bills, I would say, are probably number one. But I mean, the Chiefs are just right up there, I think. And I'm just not going to overreact to all of to what everybody's, like the Chiefs starting. I think that the Chiefs starting. I think that the Chiefs starting the season off at 2-3. I just don't think it matters that much. Just like how I didn't think that the Ravens starting the season off 1-3 really mattered that much. What really mattered is that they lost Lamar Jackson and then lost 2 games that they probably would have won otherwise in a row. And now they're 1-5. So now I think the Ravens are in real trouble. But the fact that the Ravens started off 1-3, the fact that they lost to the Bills, the Lions, and the Chiefs all in the first 4 weeks of the season doesn't tell me anything, because if they had lost all 3 of those games spread out throughout the season, it doesn't seem so bad. But it seemed a lot worse because they lost them in the first 4 weeks of the season. They start off 1-3. People forget, they're going 1-3. It doesn't really tell you much because of their schedule. A little bit like, I think the Colts look good this year. Without question, they look good. But have they beaten anybody all that great? I mean, sure, they came close to beating the Rams. Maybe they beat them if Adonai Mitchell doesn't drop the ball before the end zone. But, I don't really know how to feel about the Colts, really, because who have they beaten that are really so good? I think the Jaguars might actually be the best team in that division. Because, beating the Chiefs is definitely a better win than any of the Colts wins. So we don't even really know how good the Colts are. But I don't know. All I can tell you is that the Jets are just the Jets are just the disaster. But you know what? I think that this year there's a whole lot of NFL fans that just overreacted to certain changes. You know what I mean? That I just don't think really mattered that much. Like everybody freaking out about the Chiefs, like I was talking about. Oh, the Denver is going to win that division. I don't really think Denver looks a whole lot different than they did last year. I think they look okay. I think they probably finished similar to how they did last year. Or the Lions losing their 2 offensive coordinators. I don't know. The Lions, outside of this game against the Chiefs, they look pretty similar to the way they looked last year. Like, they don't really look all that much different. And the Chiefs look exactly the same. Even the Steelers look almost exactly the same, but with different quarterbacks. Look, Aaron Rodgers looks really good. And I think the Steelers have a legit shot to win the AFC North. But at the same time, the Steelers have this weird tendency of just declining late in the season lately, and just not being able to win a playoff game, just like they did last year. I can see that happening again this year. Anyway, I want to move on to college football. Alabama with a great win against Missouri on the road. I'm not quite ready to give my college football rankings quite yet, but I mean, Alabama has got to be I am super optimistic about Alabama this year. Alabama's got to be a top 5 team, and they have a legitimate chance to win the SEC, a legitimate chance. Now that Texas doesn't look good, they lost to Florida, and the fact that Alabama was able to beat Georgia on the road obviously puts them ahead of Georgia. Even if they end up losing a game, they go on the road to beat an undefeated Missouri team. Alabama's offense looks phenomenal. Ty Simpson looks really, really good. Everybody's talking shit about Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson looks like a really good quarterback. The Alabama's offense looks great. And Alabama has a legitimate shot to win the SEC. Look at the rest of their schedule. They play Tennessee at home. Alabama's 8.5-point favorites, or 7.5-point favorites. According to ESPN Bet, 7.5. According to ESPN Bet, 8.5-point favorites. Although ESPN Bet's odds tend to be a little bit off. According to our friends over at Novig, Alabama is Alabama are Alabama. According to Novig, Alabama is actually 8.5-point favorites at home against Tennessee, and that's probably going to be their toughest matchup for the rest of the year. I mean, then they play South Carolina, who's having a down year. Then on the road, they play LSU at home, which they'll probably be 10-point favorites in that game for the way LSU's been playing. And then Oklahoma, we don't even know if John Mateer is going to be back. Depending, I mean, that game's a little tougher depending on the status of John Mateer. But if John Mateer's not back, I mean, that's a pretty easy win for Alabama. Then they play the post-Thanksgiving, or I don't know, November 20. I don't know if that's after. It might be before Thanksgiving, actually. Eastern Illinois, typical SEC matchup in late November, and then the Iron Bowl. And Auburn is not looking too good this year. So Alabama has like what seems to me like a clear path to make the playoffs. They get to the SEC championship. They avoid A&M this year, and A&M actually has a fairly similar schedule. They also play South Carolina. Although I would say A&M schedule is probably a little bit tougher. They have to play Missouri on the road, LSU on the road, and Texas. Whereas Alabama's toughest matchup is going to be LSU at home. So A&M's schedule is going to be a bit tougher, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if A&M drops one or two of those games. But so far, this is the best A&M team we've seen in quite a while so far. I mean, next week A&M plays Arkansas on the road. A&M's actually favored by 7.5 points. Arkansas is a disaster this year. But yeah, A&M, I mean, Alabama already beat Missouri on the road. A&M still has to do that and then play before that, though, they have to play LSU on the road, and they have to play Texas on the road. I don't know. You never know. Even the Texas matchup, you just never really know. But Alabama, like, they've got to be I haven't looked at the odds. They've got to be one of the favorites to win the SEC, because even if they lose, let's say they lose to Tennessee or they lose to LSU, I mean, it would be a crazy surprise if they lose both those. But even if they split, then they're 1-1. Then they have one loss. I mean, even with one loss, Alabama, one loss in the SEC, I mean, Alabama probably has a pretty clear path to make the SEC championship. So I could totally see Alabama just winning the SEC this year. The SEC is the SEC is a bit wide open. And Alabama does have the tiebreaker over Georgia if it comes down to the two of them. The only thing is maybe if there's a three-way tie, but I think Alabama really is has just a clear path to winning the SEC, and would be a huge improvement from last year. And that's going to save Kalen DeBoer's job for sure. That would definitely save Kalen DeBoer's job. All the Kalen DeBoer critics are pretty quiet now. I think the same thing's going to happen, by the way, with USC, who just destroyed Michigan 31-13. USC is also, I think, having a renaissance season. They're probably going to miss the playoffs. They're probably going to. I think USC is probably. I do think they're going to miss the playoffs, but you know what? Could a 10-2 SEC team get in? Let's say they lose to Notre Dame. They have a loss against Notre Dame and Illinois. I don't know. Maybe they could. The Big Ten. I mean, the biggest. I would say. By the way, moving on to staying in the SEC, Georgia beating Auburn in what was one of the worst officiated games I've ever seen. I had Georgia -3.5, I think it was, or maybe it was 4.5, whatever the number was by the time I actually put real money on it. On the podcast I had on Unnecessary Wagers, Georgia was my lock, actually, and that was -3.5. By the way, speaking of unnecessary wagers, I actually made the Packers -14.5 my lock. And then by the time we recorded the show, it turned out that Flacco was traded to the Bengals. And I didn't know about Flacco being traded to the Bengals when we recorded the show. And then when I gave my lock, Liam just says, oh, by the way, the Bengals traded for Joe Flacco. And I was like, oh, really? I actually didn't even know that they traded for Joe Flacco by the time we recorded the show, by the time we did the show, because I had just woken up. I didn't know what actually had happened. I don't always check Twitter as soon as I get up. So it had just been a few hours. I had just gotten up. I was just preparing for the show. I didn't know that this had happened. Anyway, it's all right. I could have changed my pick, but I didn't. But Georgia beat Auburn in what was a terribly officiated game. I think the biggest problem with Georgia is that Georgia's pass rush was not only was their offense inefficient, but their pass rush was inefficient. What has been the biggest, what has been the key to beating Auburn, which has been getting to the quarterback. That's been the key to beating Auburn. This past Saturday, Georgia only had one sack the entire game. They only had one sack. And Georgia is a defensive team. They're supposed to be arguably the best defense in the SEC. And they only sacked him once. Auburn, in the previous two games against Texas A&M, A&M had 5 sacks. Texas A&M does not have the defense that Georgia does. And Oklahoma, I think, against Oklahoma, he was sacked at least 5 times. I think even more. He was sacked 9 times by Oklahoma. Georgia got 1 sack. That's why the game was so close. And also, the officials helped Georgia a lot. But the reason the game was so close is because they couldn't get to the quarterback. I mean, look, Auburn isn't really all that bad. I don't think Auburn is really all that bad. I think Auburn, just similar to what Florida is, Auburn is a really good example of this year at least, is a really good example of a hypothetical SEC team. They're like the hypothetical SEC team. What I mean by that is, like, every year you look at a team that's in the ACC or the Big 12, and people often say things like, well, if they had played in the SEC, they'd be getting hammered. And that's similar to like a lot of times, like Syracuse looks kind of good, Virginia, teams like that, or some random, BYU or whatever, random, pick your favorite Big 12 team. People say things like, well, they played in the SEC, they'd be getting hammered. That's what Auburn is. Auburn this year looks like the ultimate hypothetical SEC team. They're not really terrible. I mean, they're competitive. They were competitive against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, with John Mateer, looked like one of the best teams in the country. John Mateer was a Heisman candidate before he got hurt. Auburn, if not for a couple of bad calls that went against, by the way, is it just me? It seems like Auburn is getting screwed by officials more than anybody. They're like the reverse Chiefs. They're like the opposite of the Chiefs of college football. They are getting screwed by officials the most. Even in their own stadium, they're getting screwed by officials the most. They got screwed by officials and a couple of really bad missed calls, with a terrible missed pass interference call, and what was obviously a penalty when the Oklahoma wide receiver looked like he was jogging off the field and just then lines up, which you're not allowed to do. That is against the rules. It should have been a penalty rather than a touchdown. So outside of that, and maybe Jackson Arnold running for his life a little bit less, Auburn could have won that game against Oklahoma. And they could have won the game. And they held A&M to 16 points, and they really could have won that game too. So they were competitive against A&M and Oklahoma, who, at least Oklahoma at the time and A&M now, I mean, A&M's arguably the best team in the SEC right now. They were competitive. And the key to beating them is really just getting to the quarterback, which Georgia wasn't able to do. You would think that Georgia's pass rush would have been overwhelming against Auburn, given that even A&M's pass rush, and A&M is not a defensive team like Georgia is, or even Oklahoma. Georgia, you'd think, would have been able to get to the quarterback much better. Now, I think some of this is a product of just being the road team. I mean, Oklahoma and A&M were both at home, and also I think Auburn prepared for it. Like, they knew Georgia's pass rush, because Auburn had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. So I think, it's a product of them being at home and coming off a bye week, whereas Georgia, they just played last week. They had a little less time to prepare. I think that's a little bit of a product of it. But this game, this is another game where it really, just like the Oklahoma game, this could have gone either way. I mean, the play where they called a fumble, Jackson Arnold was clearly the ball clearly broke the plane. I don't even know how they talk about indisputable evidence and things like that. I don't know how much more indisputable you can get than that play. I don't know how much more indisputable you can get. I thought it was the most obvious thing in the world that the ball broke the plane. The call should have been overturned. And like I said, I'm kind of happy about it because I had Georgia, and it was my lock on unnecessary wagers, but it was a bad call. It was a bad call. And Auburn totally got screwed by the officials. And I don't know what it is in college football, but it seems like that even baseball figured out how to speed up the games before college football did. I mean, college football is just like, it's these games just go on and on and on. I was listening to the game on my phone while I was driving, and I remember, and this was before the first half even ended, but at one point the announcer said, it's been 32 minutes since the 2-minute timeout, and the half hasn't even ended yet. Like, how does that even happen? Where you have a 32 minute, 2-minute timeout. Like, that's got to be like a record for like the longest 2 minutes. That's got to be like close to a record. Anyway, I also want to talk about Indiana. They shocked Indiana, shocked Oregon. I was shocked to see this. I mean, if you want to see a team that like really improved a lot since last year, it's Indiana. I mean, Indiana, they were dominant over their competition, but their competition last year was just the little sisters of the poor. It was just a disaster, their competition last year. This year, they have a dominant win over Illinois. They have a win over Iowa, and Iowa's really a fairly good team this year. Win over Iowa on the road, and a win against Oregon on the road. That is, I mean, if you want, I don't think Indiana is the best team in the country, but I think you can argue that Indiana has the best resume. I think you can argue they have the best resume. I don't think there's any team in college football this year that is convincingly great, but I think Ohio, except maybe Ohio State, but Indiana has possibly the most convincing resume. And it's certainly possible. Indiana, they're going to be walking to the playoffs at this point. It looks like they're going to be walking to the playoffs. I mean, if you look at the rest of Indiana's schedule, the best team they have to play looks like it's Penn State. Or even possibly, I mean, they play Michigan State, UCLA, both at home, Maryland on the road, Penn State on the road, Wisconsin, and then on the road, and then Purdue. I'm sorry, Wisconsin at home, and then Purdue on the road. Wisconsin, Purdue, those are some of the like the worst teams in the Big Ten. Wisconsin's horrible this year. And now what we know about Penn State, that Indiana should win that game too. It looks like Indiana is going to end up finishing the season undefeated, or the regular season at least, and it looks like they're going to have a clear path to the Big Ten championship. They're probably going to play Ohio State. Ohio State's going to be favored. But the other question is, maybe if Indiana does a good enough job, maybe he's going to end up going to Penn State, because, Penn State has to hire somebody. And I think there's a solid chance that Penn State ends up hiring Curt Cignetti. I think there's a solid chance they end up hiring Curt Cignetti. If they end up going, if the season for Indiana goes the way it's continuing to go, I think I can see Curt Cignetti leaving Indiana for the Penn State job. I can totally see that happening. And that's really just the type of job Indiana is. Like, for a guy like Curt Cignetti, who's done such a good job, I think Indiana is kind of like a stopgap type of job for a guy like Cignetti. I think that I could totally see him going to Penn State, and like I said, I think that could end. I think that Penn State hitting rock bottom may have just been what they needed. I was saying this on Leftovers. I think Penn State hitting rock bottom just may have been what they needed. They needed to hit rock bottom to like finally make a change. But All right. So that's I got nothing left. That's the show this week. I'll be back next week. Hopefully Johnny will be back next week. I won't go solo again next week. 2 solo shows in a row. That's a lot. Leftovers and then this one. All right. So see you guys next week.